that for later. Hello and welcome to UC Today. I'm Kieran Devlin, live at CASA 2025, the CPAS Accelerations Summit in Amsterdam. I'm delighted to be joined by Andrew Collinson of the CPAS Acceleration Alliance. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. I've had lunch, I'm well fed and fueled, the vibe's great, I'm having fun. What could be better?
Absolutely. It's been a terrific couple of days, and one of the key themes underpinning these couple of days, if not arguably the central trend, has been intelligent engagement. How would you define intelligent engagement and why is it important?
Yeah, well, I'll start at the beginning really, which is I've been working with CPAS maybe for 15 years, but from a distance, looking at telco business, new business models of telecoms. And in all honesty, having run a research business during that whole time, I never really understood what CPAS was. And I think there's a fundamental problem with CPAS, which is its name, which is a concept about concepts, a communications platform as a service. You have to do mental loops to understand what the damn thing means. And then I read 100+ case studies, and I had to read them a lot, like 5 times each, to really ingest it. And I realised this technology has got amazing benefits, and businesses really want it. And also that businesses, enterprises, but also business more broadly, are going through a journey. And the journey is towards this idea of intelligent engagement, which is, if you're a business owner, what you really want to do is you really want to know what your customers are thinking, and you want to be able to act on it. But not just your customers, your partners, your people. You want to engage more intelligently with the world around you. And that means faster, better, more accurately. And CPAS actually is one of the key tools in that. It's not the only tool. You've got a lot of other tools in the other ASes, as everyone says, UCAS and CCAS. But I hate to say this, but who cares? Which AS it is. That's not what, as a business owner, you want. You want solutions, you want outcomes. And actually, these technologies are the route to solving a lot of these problems. And I think with the inclusion of the VCOM's angle, which is really a development in the last year or so, which we've been privy to be part of and to see close up, VCOMs add that extra element of analysis and insight into the picture. And if you couple that with the change that we've seen in the last few years with AI being able to transcribe voice has suddenly become a data mine, a gold mine of data. So if you make your ability to interrogate that information, use that information compliant, because that is a big risk for anybody looking at this space. You think, I'd like to do this, but am I going to get nailed by the regulator or whoever? And VCOMS solves that problem. It creates a standard, it makes it compliant, it makes this technology accessible. And again, VCOMS, the word is important to technologists, as a CPAS or whatever, but to most people in business, they care about this idea: can I interact with my business swiftly and intelligently? And the word engagement is there because it isn't just about communications. It's not the traditional CPAS business of SMSs, RCS, WhatsApp, etc. And voice, obviously, they're all in there. But the things like APIs, the network APIs, is another new branch of the industry which solve many of the same problems. So if you think about people trying to communicate with people or trying to complete a transaction, you want to know that the person you're transacting with is indeed me, Andrew. But how can you be sure of that? And things like the network APIs allow you to do that without asking the customer. They accelerate the process, and others of them help you do other things more quickly. So if you build all of these solutions into your armory, or whatever metaphor you want to choose for it, your workshop or whatever, you can do incredible things, and that's what businesses want. And I feel that the industry is cloaking itself with technical jargon. Now, of course, there's a danger. A word like intelligent engagement is a long phrase, and it sounds like more technical jargon. And I always say to people, can you come up with a better version? Because it's the best one we can think of so far. But the point is, it's much closer to what people really want and what actually matters. And what we feel is that if we can get the industry pulling in the same direction and communicating with a narrative which relates to this, it will do, it will engage its stakeholders better. It will allow people to understand the benefits that it produces. Because as I say, I went through 100 plus, and we're gathering more of these case studies. So one of the things we're after is good case studies from the industry, whether it's SMS, voice, RCS, VCons, APIs, the whole lot. I want to know, I want the evidence, because the evidence is so compelling, and then what we're trying to do is package that evidence and give it back to the industry. Because one of the things we can do, I think, as CPASA, and I'm an associate with CPASA, helping them develop their research propositions. One of the things we can do is to repackage that knowledge and give it back to people in a way that helps communicate. Because you spend so much time, even the veterans in CPAS, I've noticed, will spend time figuring out, what is it you do again? With a different company. And so it's interesting, we've got a global, well actually it's a drinks company, but it's interesting that we've got a map of the world next to us. The map of what goes on in this space is too complicated at the moment. What we need is more like a tube map of how this industry works. Actually, something simpler than a tube map to make it really simple for people to do. And what we're trying to do is craft that narrative. Now, as I say, have we got it right? I don't know yet. I think it's a good start, and the feedback we've had on it has been very positive. People like the case directory, they like the idea. We've yet to kind of get a full traction on it, but I think it's a good start, and that's what this is all about. And that's the job of the CPAS Acceleration Alliance, is to accelerate. But I don't think it's just about CPAS. I think it's about the industry, which is why I think intelligent engagement is a more inclusive term, a more compelling term. Sorry, you did ask, so you got a bit of a rant there, I'm sorry.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I was chatting with Rob, and it's been so fascinating. So yes, you've got telecoms people, but you've also got UCAS, you've got CCAS, you've got AI, you've got over a dozen different sectors of business technology all entwined, and they're all on the same page with, we need business outcomes, we need use cases, because there's no better sales pitch than a customer success story. And I'm really curious to get your, I think this has been a really encouraging event, and I think VCons, if it is as good as it sounds, could be genuinely groundbreaking. I know that's the most overused phrase in tech marketing, but if it does deliver what it promises, it can completely upend customer experience, unified communications.
Absolutely.
And what do you think is the next steps? And then this might be a tricky question to deliver, because there is so much tumult, especially in the headwinds in the markets. But
Well, so let's talk about the state of CPAS report, which I've just written on behalf of the Alliance and its member. It talks to loads of people, a lot of people, to get the insight from it. I'm grateful for the knowledge that I'm building, so I've used a lot of work of other analysts as well. It lays out kind of a bit like, Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven and Highway to Hell. There are different routes ahead for the industry. And so the report lays out 3 routes. It lays out a steady growth route, because everyone thinks it's going to grow. So despite all of the people being slightly, down, everyone says it's going to grow. Where else can you look at an industry? You're right on the corner of AI, telecoms and cloud. In the application that Gen AI particularly is specifically relatively good for. You can talk about what AI is good for and how difficult it is to make it work and so on, but it's relatively good for this stuff. Communications, interpretation of information, repurposing information. So it's a fantastic opportunity. It's not a slam dunk that it goes on, the stairway to heaven. They're doing, we said 3 times growth, 100 billion, which is where it would get. Steady growth would get you about 55, something like that, 55, which is not a small number, let's face it. I think it's actually very exciting, and I think the industry goes through, or every industry goes through waves of emotion about how they feel. So maybe a couple of years ago it was a bit down because the heightened valuations that came through during COVID dropped. But it doesn't mean the industry is not valuable, it's just market sentiment. It's stock market sentiment that changes those valuations. And stock market sentiment is, a very difficult beast to ride. What you need to do as a business and as an industry, set your sights on what delivers real value? What do customers want? What are they going to pay for? Because valuations are going to change all the time, and they change for lots of reasons that are way too complicated to actually get your head around. It's just going, if I aim for strategic value and I successfully execute on that, I've got a good chance of delivering the other things. So going back to your question about optimism, I would be very optimistic if I was a player in this market. And your question is, does beacons make a big difference? Yeah, I think it does. I think, because the difference is you can use AI to do this stuff anyway. In theory, there's always the question about the difference between theory and practice. In theory, you can chuck AI at your data and get great answers out of it. Most of us, and I imagine your audience is very much in that audience that would be in this category, know that is not true. You cannot just chuck AI at a problem and get the answer. It doesn't work like that. It's not magic. It requires a lot of work. What Vcons does, first of all, it provides a structure and a standard. And I mean, in my line of working, analysis structure is very, very important. In data processing, structure is incredibly important. Same sort of principles. Structure is massive. And it gives discipline around it. Discipline about what data is used, how it's used, where it's, and compliance. Compliance is absolutely critical. So what Vcons does, first of all, as I say, is create a standard that allows something to scale. Why does that matter? Well, if you've ever tried to build a house, let's say, or imagine trying to build a house with planks of different sizes. It's possible, but it's really difficult. If you've got standards, all the planks are compatible, the nails, everything, and it makes it much easier. Very simple analogy, but to me it really helps understand why standards really matter. So you've got a standard, you've got a way of making it easier, and it's compliant. And what does that mean? It means that if you change a part of your data, the processes and mechanisms are there for you to adjust the rest of the process so that data has been properly removed and is no longer sort of a ghost presence in it. That's incredibly important because as a business owner, you're thinking, if I do this, am I faced with technical debt? Not just technical debt, data debt. Have I got stuff I can't use now because the law's changed? And it allows you to be protected against that. Perhaps even more important, when you look at the route to market, so operators as one route to market, they're not the only one, but they're an important one. And I was talking to Collinson, BT head of hyperscalers and CPaaS, and he said last week, the one thing that CPaaS always guarantees is compliance. And it's a really interesting insight because what it means, and what I think the CPaaS industry does, is a classic intermediary industry where it's taking out the complexity, solving complexity as a problem for the end customer. We'll make all this stuff work. Don't worry about this API, that API, the standards, this, that, and the other. We will make it work. We will make it compliant. We will deliver it. Whether that's as a solution or as a part solution or as an integrated piece, we are able to do that. So Vcon suddenly is this opportunity to transform the analytics part. And the analytics part is the highest value part of anything. So you think about, I don't know, the internet. The people who've made the most money out of the internet are probably going to get this wrong, but people like Google, who structured it, were able to provide the metadata, were able to see where the value lies. The value always rises to the top in the data and to the metadata. The Vcon allows the business to own its own version of that. So I used to run STL Partners research business, and I was also the commercial director of that business. And what I wanted more than anything, and I promise you is what I really want, I used to dream about this, was to be able to, not to hear, but to know what went on in all the research conversations and all the sales conversations. Because I knew that if I could interrogate that information, I could create a better product, I could coach my salespeople better, I could understand what was going on better, I could work out what I should do differently. But I couldn't. And Vcons is exactly the solution to that. So I have that kind of empathetic grasp of the value of Vcons from that perspective. I can tell you I would have paid for it. And as a small business owner, which research companies are relatively small in the scheme of things, you're not that keen to pay for much, but that I would pay for because it would provide such clear and obvious value. So if you go back to the industry, which is your original question, and you go, well, we're looking at messaging. what's going to happen in messaging? Well, WhatsApp announced some price cuts. You know, you don't know what the hyperscaler is going to do. You cannot rely on the kind of stability of the core business. It's not going to go away, but as you say, it's going to be turbulent. There are going to be difficult things. You cannot rely on customers really understanding the benefits of RCS. I mean, the industry can do a better job of communicating it. That's one of the things I'm banging the drum about a bit to people. Say, communicate what this stuff is good for. You know, it's really important. But you get something like Vcons comes on, and you think, actually, there's a really significant new opportunity here. How much is it worth? I have no idea. Nobody's sized it yet. It's too new. That's one of the things I realised when I was looking at it. I think, well, I probably should have a think about that when I've got over CASA and talk to some of the bright people and see if I can get them to work it out. I think it's quite a difficult question. But, I mean, let's just go back to some theory for a minute. If I look at the use cases, the case studies I looked at, on average they show where they will show a benefit, they'll show 30% cost saving on average. Some show a lot more, some a bit less. They will show customer experience benefits, usually quite tangible ones, but people find those slightly harder to value, although they say they're important. And growth comes afterwards, and people find it hard to ascribe growth benefits to something like CPaaS because they'll typically ascribe it to the new product or whatever they've just launched, but it has those too. So if you think about that and you think, well, actually, supposing CPaaS can be applied across the enterprise value chain, all of enterprise, I don't know how much all of enterprise is worth, and you said it's not all of 30% cost saving, it's not all of the NPS version, the customer experience, it's not all of the growth, but it's got to be some component of that. I'm much more comfortable in believing that if you gave me accurate information about what I wanted in every call, I can improve the performance of my company by percentage points. I'm absolutely confident I could do that. And so you're giving, you without any numbers, I'm looking at that as not quite a racing certainty, but thinking that's a good bet. Once we start to put some numbers around it, and I'm hearing numbers from people which are quite high about the improvements it produces in performance, they're saying 2 or 3 times. Well, I'm sorry, I'm a bit cynical, but that's my job. They might be right, by the way, but it's my job to be a little bit more sceptical, perhaps, rather than cynical. Okay, show me the proof, show me the evidence of that, and we'll see what it is. But what they're also saying is, I know that, and I believe this. I haven't seen the proof, but I believe it, which is that businesses are more prepared to pay for that than they are for messaging. And I would almost certainly agree with that. I mean, it's not every business, but I think that's probably real. So yeah, if I was backing money to put into this, I'd back it in this space with one caveat, which is who knows what the hyperscaler is going to do. And so providing you're mindful of the risk of how hyperscalers and other people tend to approach these markets, and you think you have the opportunity to create the proposition in time, which you probably do, because they don't tend to assimilate markets until they're of a significant scale and size, and they can, and there's a reason for them to do it. And I don't think we're anywhere near that stage at this point. I think there's a window of opportunity to do that. It may last beyond that, because typically where AI companies are continuing to succeed, because did you see the Nanda report this summer about the 95% of AI stuff reportedly failed?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if the 95% is right. You see other numbers. It's too early to call it AI. I mean, anybody who's doing it knows you can't really measure it yet in that way. You can look at some of the outcomes, you can look at some of the KPIs, you can't really look at it. But what that Nanda report does say, which I thought was spot on, is that the companies that will succeed will have built A, learning, and B, unique customer and insight advantage into it. And I believe that, because when you look at